Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is Thursday, June 11th, 2020, and you've tuned into the Rebel News live stream. Now, normally, the big boss man himself, Ezra Levin, he's in his chair. But as you may know, Ezra's working on a super special and important project. So he needs a few days, needs a few shows off, and that's when Sheila Gunn-Reid, my lovely co-host, and I take the wheel and guest host for Ezra. And Sheila, it was so great seeing you at Rebel News World Command yesterday. You came into the bunker. I have to say, you were so impressed that we have our own shower, and yet you didn't take advantage of it. I'm not saying you were a sweaty Betty yesterday, even though the Humidex was at plus 40, but I'm glad you were able to check out, at least visually, the amenities we have here.
I was simply remarking that the Rebel World headquarters is like a self-contained little zone. It's an autonomous zone, if you will, to use the parlance of the far left in Seattle. Yeah, you've got a lot of things there. You guys don't actually have to leave the bunker if you don't need to. You have a shower, you got lots of snacks, and I brought even more snacks for everybody. And yeah, I mean, it's quite an operation there in Rebel World headquarters in Toronto. It's a step up from the little bunker in which I work here in Alberta. And it's nice to see. Whenever I go to the office, everybody makes me feel so welcome, even though I maybe get there like once, twice, maybe 3 times a year. But everybody makes me feel so welcome. So even though I work remotely, everybody makes me feel like part of the team, which is really great.
Well, and that's the thing, too, Sheila, going back to what you were saying earlier about being under siege. If ever we were under siege by, say, Antifa, like Antifa is doing in Seattle right now, and we'll get to that story a little later on. This is what's an improvement over medieval times, I think, here at Rebel. I mean, I don't mind being under siege, but being deprived of a shower, that's one of the true understated luxuries of life. And certainly back 1,000 years ago, they didn't have showers in those medieval castles. So, you know, the fact that we can be squeaky clean and hygienic as we're under siege, I think, is a very positive thing of working here. Although we've never been under siege because I don't think people know where we're located, and we're going to keep it that way. But Sheila, this is the point where you say what it is that we're trying to accomplish here for the next hour.
Exactly. So, as you pointed out, this is the daily live show. Ezra hosts it Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We host it Tuesday, Thursday, at least in the short term. I don't know if that's going to stay on as a permanent thing, but it might be in the best interest of the company if that were the case, because apparently we're much better at this than Ezra, because our viewers can donate a little bit of money at us to, I don't know, help keep a fresh bar of soap in the Rebel World headquarters shower for David Menzies, because we rely on the support of viewers like you at home. So we always have a very lively conversation happening in the live chat. I see a lot of people are getting to know each other and forming bonds and friendships over common causes in there. But if you'd like to support the work that we do, you can willingly donate into a super chat. And what that will do is highlight your comment or question to us. I'll read it. If I don't see it, then Mr. Producer Justin will send it to me, and then I'll read it. And I think there's one that we missed yesterday, and I'll try to find that. I noticed when I was reading back in the comments on YouTube that I did miss one yesterday, so I will do my best to find that today and read it, because we got to give the people what they pay for. And that's just a way for you to support the work that we do here at Rebel News without any sort of Justin Trudeau intervention into our lives and into our company.
And indeed, and you know, Sheila, to go right off the hopper, we should talk about what's happening in Seattle. I really wish I was there to observe this, because it almost sounds unbelievable. It almost sounds like the plot line for the Kurt Russell movie Escape from New York, except it's on the left coast. And that is the fact that Antifa has created an autonomous zone there. I guess they've sealed themselves off. Even President Trump weighed in and told told the city, take back your streets, to which President Trump was told by the Seattle mayor to go take a long walk off a short pier. And look at this. It's like when John Tory walled off High Park here in Toronto to prevent Torontonians from smelling the cherry blossoms. It looks very official, these barricades. But the difference between John Tory, the mayor of Toronto, using the police and using the infrastructure to wall off a park, is that he is the elected official. He is the elected mayor. These are a bunch of thugs, and they're just taking advantage about all this. The fallout from the George Floyd death, Sheila, where we've gone from not trying to fix the system, not trying to get rid of those cops who don't deserve a badge and a gun, but to get rid of entire police departments en masse and replace them with what? Antifa? I mean, Antifa is one of these groups that likes to talk about systemic racism, but they're systemic thuggery. They're systemic violence. They're systemic terrorism. Why should anyone think that they take the moral high ground on this issue? But you told me something funny just before we on camera, that their siege might end prematurely, not because of the state coming in to forcibly remove them, but because of supply line logistics.
Yeah. This whole idea of just declaring an autonomous zone and then the local municipalities like, well, we don't want to deal with it, fine, whatever. Don't threaten me with a good time. I've lived my whole life to be an autonomous zone. If I could just separate myself from the rest of the province, the rest of the country, that would address a lot of my own problems. So something for me to consider. But yeah, unlike these ill-prepared hippies and fascists is what they really are, I would probably be okay for a little while, food-wise, supply-wise. Apparently they're going to run out of food and supplies, and they're relying on the goodwill of people around. Like, they're putting out these social media calls for people to drop off food because in the name of social justice, apparently they invited the local homeless people into their new society, and then the homeless people basically looted these soft-handed middle-class kids who are out there fighting fascism, and now they have nothing left. And I think we should be starting a countdown for just how long until these, like I say, soft-handed middle-class professors' kids LARPing as freedom fighters, until they're murdered by crackheads, because it's not these people actually need cops. Like, the people calling for the dissolution of police forces, they are the people with the least amount of skills to be able to protect themselves in the absence of a police force. And I'm genuinely concerned that these people who've created this autonomous zone in Seattle, they're going to learn the hard way just how valuable police are to them. And I think it's going to happen pretty fast.
Yeah, and as for the Antifa members, too, once their stomach starts rumbling, it's funny, Sheila, these twerps, I can only imagine the conversation they're having. Like, oh, man, I went to the Starbucks in the autonomous zone, and it's, closed down. Yeah, because you built a wall around it. They can't get their supplies either, and they're terrified of you. And speaking of which, there are chapters of Antifa. There's, it's a very loosely organized organization, if you can even call it that, in certain areas. And I went last week to Toronto Antifa, which were descending upon the U.S. consulate. Ooh, that sounds serious. And originally we thought we need all hands on deck. Maybe we need security. Oh, boy, did I get that wrong, because I've never seen such wimpiness, such poor, pathetic, wannabe Antifa member. In fact, I think if an Antifa member from Portland was coming by and saw that demonstration of the U.S. consulate, they would have taken their bike locks and smashed them over the head for giving Antifa a bad name. But don't take it from me, folks. Just check out this clip in which I try to engage I thought she was a she, he might be a he. I'm not sure, but I'm just trying to engage them into explaining what it is they're there for. And apparently that was like asking a mathematical question in physics or something like that. But check it out.
Well, apparently, it looks like when they set up a demonstration on a public sidewalk, it becomes their private property. He's my cameraman, yes.
Yeah, we're here, we're undercover, we're just like Antifa. We just asked for the flags, they gave us one.
You said you're undercover?
Yeah,
Oh, undercover for whom?
this person in general.
Okay, then.
I just bought a helmet, you know, wearing a COVID mask. Showed up, they gave me one of their hats, or one of their flags. Antifa.
I'm confused. Then you're not Antifa? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay then.
No.
You kind of look like Antifa, but anyways, I'll take you at your word. So what's your purpose here then, sir?
I think Antifa is a terrorist organization. I know they're a terrorist organization. They fit the definition. Violence in the pursuit of political aims is terrorism. They're literally killing people, literally wearing masks, covering their face, and killing people who disagree with them. That's the firmest definition of terrorism. That's domestic terrorism, okay? And they're listed, you know, as terrorists by Donald Trump exactly as they should be. And if you have opinions, you know what? Stand behind what you say, okay? Don't wear a mask. Don't cover your face. Stand behind what you say. Stand behind your name. Stand behind your points. If you're right, if you're true, if you're good, then stand behind what you have to say, okay? The only people who cover their faces and cover their names are people who are cowards, who are wrong, and you know, don't have the man or aren't the men enough to stand behind what they say, what their points, what they believe in.
They claim they're anti-fascist, but they don't really fight fascism because they're the fascists by doing all this violence.
They say they're anti-Nazi, okay? I'm Jewish, okay? I've never once met anyone who identifies as a Nazi, okay? What they're doing is they're cheapening Jewish history by calling everyone Nazis. They're using my people's history, you know, to further their own political agenda. So they take Jewish history, you know, the atrocities Nazis committed to Jews, and they use it to further their own political agendas and defame and slander other people, okay? Not once, I've been going to rallies since I was 17 in Canada, not once have I ever met anyone who identifies as a Nazi.
Hey man, what brings you out to this protest?
No, you're a fool.
Did you hear me? I'm sorry. What brings you out to this protest?
I'm not going to give your trashy rag a talking piece. Fuck off.
You are a cartoon, my friend.
Wow, that seemed like her.
Keep your distance from me. Keep your distance from me.
Can't you articulate your point?
Not to you. I'll happily talk to you online. You can message the event page on one of the organizers.
Why would you want to talk online? We're right here.
These people.
I don't want you near me, and I don't like your organization.
Are you Antifa?
It is xenophobia.
I'm anti-fascist.
It is scapegoating other people.
Why do you
We
use?
say no more.
Why do you use?
Fascist.
Why do you use fascist tactics and claim to be Antifa?
Who uses tactics? You don't know who I am.
Why are your comrades in the U.S. burning down black mom pub?
Why do you know who I am? You don't know who I am. Why did you say my comrades?
Well, that's what the press release said. You're standing in solidarity with your USA comrades.
We're in solidarity with people being arrested right now in the States.
Seeing what happens.
How does burning down mom pub black businesses?
Again, stop putting your position on me.
I'm asking a question. I'm not making an opinion.
You keep saying you. You say you as if you know who I am. You don't know who I am.
Okay, how?
I'm doing something.
Okay, fair enough. How do American anti-fascist members burning down mom pub black businesses? How does that bring about social justice?
What the fuck does that have to do with anything? Who am I? You don't know who I am. You keep asking me a question as if I'm related to them. I'm not related to them.
Well, you have an opinion, don't you?
I have an opinion. I have an opinion that fascists like you are the enemy.
What makes me a fascist, ma'am?
Are you with these guys?
No, I'm just a journalist covering this, actually.
You're with Rebel Media. Yeah, we know their history.
So that means it's kind of funny. My grandfather spent 5.5 years fighting the Nazis in the Second World War.
Mine too. Both.
Thank you for his service.
Both of my sides of the family escaped the Nazis. I'm Jewish.
I'm married to a Jewish woman. So how does that? You know, Sheila, first of all, I love how she gets to play the Jew card and I don't, right? You know?
Yeah.
And
you're a fascist even though, like, you actively chose a Jewish wife, a lovely, tolerant
oh, Sheila.
Jewish wife who really took one for the team. And yet you're some sort of racist. I mean, it's very fascinating, but every time I watch that video, I laugh because you're going out of your way. You're like, how about you, ma'am? And it's a dude.
I don't know yet. I'm not trying to be funny. Mr. Producer says it's for sure a dude. But the thing, too, is that I'm asking questions that I gleaned from their own press release, such as, that was a direct quote, we're standing in solidarity with our USA comrades, right? And she was challenging that. And by the way, the first two guys, those were indeed plants. They hate Antifa. And this just shows you how pathetic this Toronto Antifa light is. You clearly see them on camera telling me she is behind them, hearing every word of it. And they still stuck with the gathering and pretended to be Antifa. And they were too, I guess, chicken or cowardly to give them the boot. So they were taking the piss out of Antifa, and nobody was there to say, hey, listen, we know who you are. You stated it right on camera. Beat it. And Sheila,
they're holding up signs, David. Did you notice that they're photobombing your interview with the pink-haired Antifa guy or gal, whatever? They're holding up signs that say Antifa is a terrorist organization right in the background of your interview. So it's not like they're even trying to hide that they are anti-Antifa. They have big, huge, 4x3 signs. Say they disagree with them.
It was amazing. And then the chanting broke out. It was like a nursery class had come up with a protest because everything was in rhyming couplets. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, this is effing class war. 5, 6, 7, 8, say no to the police state. Things like that. But you know what, Sheila? At the end of the day, I'm happy. I would rather have a bunch of people like that, spew out vulgar rhyming couplets than to pick up bricks and Molotov cocktails and actually cause death and destruction. So in the final analysis, the fact that this chapter of Toronto Antifa is so wimpy, that's a good thing.
Did they do their little, this is what democracy looks like chant? Because that one, whenever they chant that and I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, are you trying to make me be a communist or a fascist? Because if you're what democracy looks like, I mean, I know.
I think Andrew Dice Clay is writing the script. Hickory dickory dock. Oh! Yeah. But I believe we have some super chats.
Thank you. Super chats for rescuing me from where that conversation was about to go. I dug up the super chat that we missed from yesterday. It was by Texas Truckin'. He gave us $5 Canadian. He did remark that we skipped it over. But yesterday during the live stream, I didn't have any communication with the office. We were just reading hand gestures, and I wasn't sure if he was telling me that I should read super chats or round third base to home. I didn't really know what he was doing with his hand. So I did miss a super chat, and it said, keep fighting, good fight, much love for Texas. When shoot hits the fan, we have your back, and hope you have ours. P.S. All this boogaloo stuff is nonsense. I'm from Canada's Texas, so I can definitely relate. Okay, we've got many super chats. Sorry, I just have to scroll ahead.
While you're looking, Sheila, I can tell you,
yes,
Mr. Producer last year at his co-ed softball league, he had the record for triples, because you were talking about rounding third to home plate. And I'll tell you how he got that record off air. He's very embarrassed about it, but I'll tell you later. Anyways, did you find those super chats?
I did. Thank you for filling in the dead air space. We've got one from Proud Boys Calgary, gives us $5 Canadian. Tempted to set up a rival autonomous zone to go to war with Antifa's autonomous zone. The vids from No Man's Land would be glorious. Daily reminder, CCP must be destroyed. I think we should all just set up our own little autonomous zones. David, you could have your little Menzies nation or whatever you want to call it I think I'd be the Commonwealth of Elk Island. My dog can be the Border and Immigration Patrol, because if she likes you, you can come in. If she barks at you and growls at you, she's a pretty good judge of character. I mean, I'm going to keep it simple. And I won't run out of food, and I'm not going to purposefully invite crackheads into my autonomous zone in the name of social justice.
And my nation, like yours, Sheila, is going to be an island. I don't want any bridges, any highways, any rail.
Yeah.
It's going to be accessible by helicopter only. These are my Lotto 649 dreams, of course, and I'm even thinking of the design of the flag. And it's going to be in a warm area, too, yeah. So, yeah, but let's keep dreaming and playing the lottery, as Mr. Producer does.
We've got one from Quarantine 2020, gives us $10 Canadian. I don't see a super chat, but that's very generous, and every little bit helps pay the bills around here. We've got one from Kane Enmark. Kane is a regular donor and a Key and Bexy superfan. Gives us $5 Canadian. David, is there a chance that Rebel News will go on Blaze TV? Don't threaten me with a good time. I love Blaze TV. I love Andrew Wilkow, and I love Mark Levin. In my mind, it's a good fit. If they allow Canadian content on. I'm a subscriber to Blaze TV. I really like the work they do, and I like how they have a conservative for everybody. So even if you're not like a particular style of conservative, they have a particular style of conservative that appeals to you, and I like that about Blaze TV. To use the language of the left, they're diverse, and I like them. I think they have their own thing going, though. They don't need us. They got their own thing going.
And how could you not love Mark Levin? I mean, he is indeed the great one. And indeed, let's be honest, Sheila, this is who we stole the term Mr. Producer from, because that's what he calls his producer.
Yeah, I love Mark Levin so much that I even, when my kids were little, I bought his children's books for them.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
The ones that he wrote with his dad, like My Dog Spot. My daughter still has that book. We're not parting with it. I'm going to put it in her little baby box because, I love Mark Levin. Thank you for getting me started on Mark Levin. We've got one from Connie McDonald, gives us $20 Canadian. Rebels bend the knee to no one. Stay loyal to the truth. Great coverage, Rebel News. Keep up the great journalism. We will. Yeah. I kneel before God and maybe the Queen. That's about it.
And Sheila, if I can interject there about bringing the truth, that particular protest last week, there were mainstream media outlets there, 680 News, CP24, City TV, I believe. I think maybe CBC came by for a second. But here's the difference. They just set up safely across the street and took long shots of, well, here's a gathering of Antifa people, anti-fascists, whatever. None of them waded into the crowd and tried to find out, what it is that they stood for. I was just asking honest, open questions. They embarrassed themselves, but it's almost as though they're protective of Antifa from not having them embarrass themselves by asking a question that they'll, step into doo-doo on. So ultimately, it's such lazy journalism. I mean, what's your story? Oh, here's 50 people that showed up outside the U.S. consulate. Back to you, Trish, for the weather. I mean, what does that tell you? Well, and
I don't know about you, but I never ask these people trick questions on either side of the fence.
You don't have to.
You don't have to. I usually ask. This is like journalism is actually not all that hard because smart people will know what they're doing and dumb people will also never know what they're doing. My template question whenever I go to a protest, a conservative protest or a left-wing protest is, why did you come down to the protest today?
Yes.
It really is. And the conservative protesters, usually very articulate, they know exactly why they're there and why they're mad, and they offer solutions to whatever wrong they're seeing. As we talked about yesterday, generally they're very family friendly, not a lot of profanity, not a lot of vulgarity on signs. And then you ask the same question at the left-wing protest, and they don't actually have a real clue why they're there. However, they'll spout a bunch of like social justice nonsense and deliverology, thinking they sound really, really smart, but normal people watch and they're like, those words don't even string together in a sentence. All you have to do is ask them why they're there. If they're at a pipeline protest, half the time they don't even know what's in the pipeline. They have no clue. They just know that somebody in their social justice circle, their social justice drum circle, told them to be mad and told them to show up at a certain time. And sometimes they get paid, sometimes they don't, but they just show up. And it's funny because that's a really easy bit of journalism. Just go there and ask people why the heck they're there. But nobody in the mainstream media is doing it. And for me, like, not coming from journalism, it just shows how lazy the mainstream media is a lot of times, because to ask these questions, to ask that one simple question, it busts the narrative. It busts their narrative that conservatives are stupid and the left is smart and compassionate.
And Sheila, you know, the proof was really in the pudding for me on those points you made last spring, when I went to a pro-life demonstration outside Queen's Park in Toronto, and that was met with a counter-demonstration. These are the pro-abortion people. And now, let's just pretend I don't have any skin in the game, I don't have a dog in this race, and I'm interviewing both sides, which is what I did. The people on the pro-life side, and I'm not taking sides, I'm just saying what I encountered. They were eloquent, they were polite, they were so lovely, they were so mannerly. And as soon as I go into the pro-abortion crowd, they can't get one sentence out of their mouth without dropping 3 F-bombs in a row and about, you know, what they want to do to me and the middle finger up. Like, why? I mean, I'm happy to give you the airtime to explain why you're pro-abortion, you know, but I think it's all part of, you know, cancel culture. If you don't agree with us, you have to be shout down by the village mob, you know, with the pitchforks and flaming torches. Yeah. And as what happened the other day to Wendy Mosley, we'll get to that later. But again, please, if someone can educate Sheila and I on why a left-of-center protest is so profane and vulgar and espouses violence, even though they chant love Trump's hate, and why right-of-center protests never go down, or very rarely go down that route, I'm all ears.
You know, it's funny that you bring up a pro-life protest, because the pro-life side of the debate, when you go to these things, like when you go to the March for Life, it's overwhelmingly female. It's very, very diverse. Like, I know for at our March for Life here in Edmonton, so many minorities, because so often minorities are social conservatives, and this one issue is so very important to them. And so it's female, it's young, it's diverse, it's multicultural, it's polite, it's faithful, it's stoic. They get a lot of abuse and they don't strike back. And then you look at the other side and it's like this ragtag bunch of unwashed misfits, confirming every stereotype I have about the left. Like when in Edmonton, they were holding up signs that said like "Hail Satan" or like pentagrams and stuff. And I'm like, this is feeding into everything I think about the left. That, you know, like that you know, maybe there is some like supernatural demonic things happening. Like I don't need those conspiracy theories rolling around in my head. I try to think of them as just wrong and not evil, and then they show up holding pentagrams at a pro-life protest, and I'm like, darn it, maybe they are that way.
Indeed.
Anyway, we have so many super chats to get through. We've got one from Observer Dude, gives us £5. This question is for David. Is it true that you were assaulted by police officers and their body cams were switched off?
This must be what happened to me in Vaughan in January when I was trying to scrub Ron MacLean. He was the Ron MacLean is famous because of Don Cherry, who had to walk the plank for being pro-poppy, such as the climate that we're in. And I tried to ask Ron MacLean questions on sidewalks, public sidewalks in Vaughan.
And several of these police officers descended upon me. One had me in a headlock, one had me in a bear hug. They were doing something, Sheila, that the Supreme Court of Canada, about a year and a half ago, I believe, ruled as unconstitutional. Namely, they were detaining me for fear that I was going to commit a crime in the future. And that wasn't the case, unless you call it, insensitive questions to Ron MacLean a crime. So it's very much like, the Tom Cruise movie from 2002, Minority Report, where there's the pre-crimes unit of the police force. I can tell you, we have since launched a lawsuit about that, and in their response back to us, they say that none of the officers were wearing body cams, so we have to rely on the cell phone footage of my cell phone, and so I don't know if they were wearing body cams and put it on, or the footage conveniently got lost. But I'll take them at their word. They weren't wearing body cams, and it doesn't matter. My cell phone footage tells you all you need to know about that night.
Yeah, I mean, the footage you took speaks for itself. That's pretty clear. We've got a super chat from Timothy Powell, gives us £5. Thanks to Ezra for well-presented reports on the protests in the UK, informing people of the laws passed over the years to stop the slave trade. Yes. Yeah, he did a great job breaking down the history of the slave trade and how they're tearing down statues of people who worked to free people from slavery. Nobody has freed more people from slavery than the Dominion. But I mean, this is when you change history and ignore history, and then people naturally don't have a historical lens to look at these things through. So, of course they're pulling down statues of people from days gone by because they don't pass the wokeness test of 2020. But in their times, they were truly, truly people who were making huge strides for human rights. And we wouldn't have the human rights we have today if not for those people then.
And again, it dovetails into cancel culture, Sheila. Even for those centuries ago, when the prism was radically different, if it doesn't meet the benchmark of political correctness in 2020, you have to be canceled and erased from history. Can't have a debate about it. Can't have a discussion about it, an honest discussion. No, we have to pretend it never happened. Again, we'll get back to Wendy Mosley on that.
I'm sort of waiting, and I think I'll have to wait forever for them to come for Tommy Douglas, eugenicist Tommy Douglas, founder of the NDP party. Yes. If there's a guy that deserves to be canceled, it's probably him for advocating for people who use the word ableist in their common speech. It's time for them to come for Tommy Douglas, but his politics are right, so they're just going to completely overlook them. And I read some things this morning that there are some problematic things about the founder of McGill University, and so how many people who graduated from McGill are going to advocate for that name change? I don't know. Probably none. We've got more super chats though. Toys Are for Boys gives us 666 Canadian. Here's 666 in Canadian to keep the evil away. Again, don't feed my conspiracy theories, but I appreciate the donation. Glad you still have a great smile. Thank you. We've got one from Zen AX, gives us $5 Canadian. Did you hear about the petition started by a middle-aged white goof, dude, to rename Dundas Street because it's racist? David?
Yeah, well, here again, that is a major artery in Toronto. And if Mr. Dundas in his time was a slave owner, I mean, of course, that's bad. They're also, by the way, nearby Dundas is my alma mater, Ryerson. They're talking about getting the statue of Egerton Ryerson removed as well because he had something to do with the institutional school thing. And I mean, really, is Mayor Tory going to bend to the will of a few hundred people on a Twitter poll? I mean, like, I can think, and how does removing the name Dundas, how does that change anything in the here and now in terms of, how minorities are treated or mistreated, if you will? Indeed, it would be spending resources the city doesn't have for virtue signaling. So it's ridiculous. Let's move on from this. But I'm afraid, as one person I once interviewed in Hyde Park about Mayor Tory, he called him Mayor Flag because he goes, he sees which way the wind is blowing and which way the flag is following, and that's where Mayor Tory goes. So maybe this is going to come to fruition. I hope not.
I wouldn't be surprised if it did. I absolutely would not be surprised that Mayor Tory goes down in history as the mayor who changed Dundas Street's name because it's racist. We've got one from I Am, gives us $10 Canadian, and they say thank you. Thank you very much. We've got one from Capa Daseo, gives us 22. Are those kroners? I'm not sure. Do you like my flag, David? I don't know if David can see the flag on his side.
I can't.
Yeah, darn it. We've got one from
wait a second. Mr. Producer's putting it up. Let's see.
Okay.
It looks a little busy for me. I got to be honest. I'm Sheila, I belong to the design school of less is more. And I'm sorry. I do appreciate the donation, but the flag design, a little cluttered. Besides, I'd probably go to a graphic designer and, get a professional to make the flag of Menzoidland.
And I was right when I guessed. It was a Norwegian krone. We've got one from Seniko. Gives us $5 Canadian. Sheila, are you going to the Liberal gun ban protest this weekend in Edmonton? If there is one, I will probably take a mosey by and check out what's what. If anything, just to make sure that the cops aren't arresting and fining people who are protesting while social distancing. We've got another donation from my friend Justin at Proud Boys Calgary, gives us $2 Canadian. Right wing invests in the future. Left wing is hedonistic. Yeah. I mean, they come from an ideology that says if it feels good, do it.
Yep.
And I think the right wing comes from an ideology that if it does good, do it. Or if it is good, do it. If it perpetuates good in the world, then you should do it. And the left-wing ideology, I think, is purely self-indulgent and selfish.
Sheila, I would go one step further. I would say there are elements of the left, and you see it growing in light of the George Floyd protests, that are pro-anarchy. They're anarchists. They want to burn down society. They want to tear it down. They don't want to fix it or repair it or make it more equitable. All their buzzwords. They just want to dine out on anarchy. They want to see the world burn. I don't know how that's a valid solution.
Again, though, this goes back to life skills. These people who want to tear down our societal structures as we know it.
Oh, it looks like Sheila's frozen. And what a pretty image, too. It looks like she's blowing us all a kiss, doesn't it, audience? So we will see if we can fix that technical problem, such as the way of the modern world and Skype and the internet, which is basically all like voodoo to me. And hopefully I'm not insulting anyone from Haiti or something by using the voodoo remark. But we did tease the Wendy Mosley story. Now, Wendy Mosley, journalist at the CBC, I think she pretty much hates us, but that's besides the point, because they were having a race relations discussion the other day, and lo and behold, Wendy Mosley used a word that was triggering to some of her colleagues who ratted her out to management. Now, part of the story, folks, is what was that word? And I'm not, beating around the bush here, because it has not been reported. I think I have an idea of what word Wendy Mosley said if it came to a story involving black people. But the amazing thing I found is that not only is the actual word not being reported, they can't even in any of the news coverage I've seen use the word N-word, which is, of course, the sanitized version of the slur. And which makes me think, does that mean that even N-word is now politically incorrect? It would appear to be, because we're all pondering what it is she said. I guess only those who heard her say it in management actually know what it is. But, again, folks, it is like the left cannibalizing itself. Wendy Mosley, my goodness, she's been with the CBC, at least 30 years, I would imagine. And yet she committed a word crime. She's, I think, suspended, might be fired, I don't know. But it harkens back to, I believe it was December of 2017, I'm going by memory here, when Stephen LeDrew was on the Tucker Carlson show on Fox News, and he was there to talk about how Canada does endorse freedom of speech and how it made perfectly good sense for a teachers association to use some 28-letter acronym to describe the LGBTQ, et cetera, community. And he went on Tucker's show to make the point. I think we have a clip, and then if you don't know what happened, I'm going to tell you what happened. Oh, Mr. Producer is just searching for that clip. And those of you who know this story know how everything tragically ended for Stephen LeDrew. Here we go.
I'll bet you, Tucker, all those categories that are in that long litany that you laid out there, I'll bet you that no one, well, maybe 5 people in all of Canada, could lay out what exactly those are. But if someone feels that they are a better person, that they are more included in society, and there's someone else in society, some teachers, who understand them or who want to understand them, that's what Canada's about.
Yeah, that's what Canada's all about. Inclusion, diversity is our strength, and all that other good stuff. Now, so the downfall, I don't know, do we have that clip, Mr. Producer, where Stephen LeDrew, where Tucker asked LeDrew what twin-spirited means? Because this was LeDrew's fatal flaw. Do we have that? 1 second, folks. And by the way, hopefully we'll get Sheila back, because I think she still has a whole raft of super chats to read. And by the way, we really, really appreciate that, folks, because we know this is probably one of the worst times to ask for money, but you always come through for us. And here is what led to Mr. LeDrew's downfall. That our Dominion is still a bastion of free speech. Check it out.
Look, this is taking place in Canada, so it doesn't affect me or most of our viewers directly, but I just sort of wonder, because free speech is not guaranteed, as you know, in your country, and people are in prison for saying unpopular things there. I wonder what would happen to someone.
Think so.
Well, you're wrong. They are, but I wonder what would happen. What would happen to somebody who said, I'm not interested in playing along with this. I don't know what it is. You don't know what it is. Leave me alone. Teach my kids to read and do math. That person would be dismissed as insensitive or bigoted or worse, wouldn't he?
No, they wouldn't. I mean, because we're not judgmental like that. So you're saying, from an American point of view, that person would be dismissed as bigoted. But in Canada, they wouldn't be. They say, okay, fine. That's your opinion. Others have a different opinion.
Oh, if only that were true.
And you know what?
I wish that were true. I mean, that's the country I want to live in. I want to live in a country where we can disagree. We don't call each other names. And we just sort of agree to disagree. But that's not the country you live in, and increasingly that's not the country I live in.
Oh, it is. It is the country that we live in, Canada. There's a big difference between the United States and Canada, and that's one of the differences.
Okay, now here's the crux of the matter. After the segment aired, LeDrew was...
So I don't think we actually showed the smoking gun clip, folks, so I'll tell you what it was. Stephen LeDrew just innocently asked, Tucker innocently asked LeDrew, for example, what does two-spirited mean? And LeDrew, and I'm paraphrasing now, but he said words to the effect of, oh, well, that's someone who's neither fish or fowl, frick or frack. It's obviously somebody who's confused. Oh, did LeDrew ever step in it? Because what happened is that night or the next day, all the LGBTQ, et cetera, activists went bonkers. I mean, the very idea that LeDrew was insinuating they were confused. Well, confused, that's like a slur, isn't it? That's like you're mentally deficient in some department. And they descended on Bell Media. And even though LeDrew had a relationship with Bell Media for well over 2 decades, he was tossed. So the irony was both perverse and profound. Here was LeDrew going on Fox News to advocate that Canada does have freedom of speech and that this crazy acronym describing that community that even those in the community don't even use, let's be honest, makes perfect sense. Well, he was tossed over the side just like that. And even the reason why Bell tossed him was not true. They said it was breach of contract. Well, LeDrew never had a contract. And why wouldn't Bell want one of its personalities on Fox News? I mean, that show garners way more eyeballs than any Bell Media product. And so in any event, it was, and I think we have Sheila back. I don't know how much of that you heard, Sheila. Oh, there you are.
None.
It's outdoorsy, Sheila, now. And I know you love that clip too, Sheila, because it ties into the Wendy Mosley thing of somebody on the left saying we have free speech, advocating for it, only to get terminated or suspended within hours of actually employing that free speech.
Just to bring everybody up to speed about what just happened to me, I don't know if maybe my husband ran into something in the yard, but the power went out in my house.
Oh.
So I found myself sitting in my darkened studio, no internet, no nothing. So I grabbed a tripod and my phone because the show must go on. And now I'm sitting outside where in the one place that I can get cell phone reception on my property. So hopefully we can get through the last 15 minutes of the show and read some super chats. And if you hear a little bit of wind, well, it's because I'm outside. So sorry, you guys are just going to have to deal with it. Oh, there's the wind coming up. Okay, let's get through some of these super chats. Vito Anthony D gives us $2 Canadian. Dan Dix was arrested by Vancouver police. I didn't hear about that. I know Dan Dix is an independent journalist in Vancouver, and he has been following the Jonathan Yaniv case much the same way as we have done. And I'd be interested to find out what he was arrested for. I'll have to look into that. I think that's going to be one of my things that I Google when I get off the stream here with David. We've got one from Wayne Swiddick, gives us $5 Canadian. Toronto and Montreal rule the country. Well, I would throw Ottawa into the mix there and maybe a little bit of Vancouver. But yeah, there are 2 countries, and Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, and to some extent Vancouver are in one, and then everybody else lives in the rest of the country. If my tripod knocked over, it's because my dog is rubbing up against it for some reason. It's just
life in the hinterland.
It's a real gong show out here today. We've got one from Richard Summers, gives us $6.99 Canadian. Expose what is taught in social justice in school, fad left-wing indoctrination, and of vulnerable mind. Yeah, there's I think there are activist teachers who will get away with teaching your children whatever they can, and the onus is on us as parents to be actively engaged in making sure that sort of stuff doesn't happen. I know everybody's busy, and you send your kids off to school, and you sort of trust the education system that they're not teaching your kids to hate themselves and hate the history of this country and not think of this country as the best place to live on the face of planet Earth. And I think parents just have to be aware. You have to, for lack of a better term, sometimes you have to interrogate your kids about what they learned at school. Let's keep going. We've got one from Frank Daniel, gives us $5 Canadian. How come CTV is advocating to target statues? That's disgusting. No wonder no one watches the mainstream media. That's so sad. I haven't seen them advocating for that, but they aren't exactly portraying it as the Marxist destruction that I would suggest David and I think it is.
Yeah.
We've got a super chat from Carrie Hollingsworth, gives us $10 Canadian. Did you hear Trudeau refer to COVID measures as population control measures? Yes, I did. In the June 8th speech, I think, or I can send the link. I did hear that. And I'm not sure if it was a Freudian slip of the tongue, or are we so far down the rabbit hole that the far left can actually be honest about what they really want from us. The Edmonton mayor, he said that, basically the beatings would continue until morale improved or whatever, like we're gonna keep doing these things until we see 100% compliance. So it's not about health, it's about control. Proud Boys Calgary gives us $5 Canadian. Emily Murphy and the Famous Five were proud eugenicists, but also feminists. The moniker tells you all you need to know. Revolution Canada gives us $20 Canadian. I don't see a super chat there, but I appreciate that. Sneaky Beaver gives us $5 Canadian. Can you play this video happened in Virginia? Sorry, I can't see the video on my side. I'm barely connected to the internet as it is. We've got one.
I think Mr. Producer says he's going to play that in a second, so keep going, Sheila.
Okay.
You'll try.
I'll just finish this last one, and then we can play it. Got one from Maria Sarzasti, gives us $5 Canadian. After migrating from communist Poland, now Comrade Justin Trudeau took my freedom away. Thank you for keeping us sane. Yeah, I was in Poland 2 years ago, and boy, what a place that is just intent to hang on to its own culture, no matter what. Overtly Christian. They care about secure borders. They care about Polish culture. And I'm sorry that now that Poland is liberated, you came to a country where we no longer care about our own culture and Western civilization. I think we have that clip, though, don't we?
That's fantastic. Oh, we still have some more?
Oh, we still have some more. I'll keep reading. I'll keep giving her. We've got one from Theo, local loaner, gives us £5. I remember a video where Antifa called David a white supremacist, but a black man took a pic with David and said he was a huge Rebel fan. Yeah. It's funny because they'll just call you a white supremacist or a Nazi. Fact be damned, simply because you're conservative, and all that does is help normalize actual Nazis. It lumps Nazis in with 50% of the population.
And Sheila, if I can weigh in there, when I get that slur from the left all the time. You're a Nazi, you're a white supremacist, you're a racist, you're a bigot, you're an Islamophobe. Those are the big five. And I always say, sir or ma'am, can you please cite an example? They go, oh, there are hundreds of examples. I go, I don't want hundreds. I just want one. And that's when they walk away, give them the middle finger. I mean, geez, imagine having one of these people as your lawyer in a court of law. They can't prove their case. I asked for one example for them to make a basis for me being one of those horrible terms they call me, and they never can deliver. It's so pathetic, Sheila.
David, they call me a white supremacist and a Nazi. I went to Auschwitz when I was in Poland covering the climate change conference, and we had like a half an afternoon off, and I said to our beloved videographer Efron, I said, let's hop a train and go to Auschwitz. We're here. Let's take this very important opportunity to see this. And I did a video from Poland talking about how, before you know it's wrong. You know it's wrong to just throw around this slur Nazi, but to have been there and feel the evil that just still hangs in the air. It's like you could cut it with a knife. You really have a new appreciation and a new disgust for people who just normalized that word to simply mean just somebody I disagree with. Truly, truly, truly the most evil thing that you could possibly be, and the left has just weaponized that to mean just a run-of-the-mill conservative.
No, you're right. It demeans what the Nazis really did. And as far as I'm concerned, Sheila, once you play the Nazi or the Hitler card, you have just lost the debate, unless, there's one little asterisk, unless the person you're describing is, for example, actually advocating for mass genocide of a specific group, then you can play it. I'll give you some leeway there. But sure. In the more than 10,000 videos we've published as a company here, I can't seem to think of us ever advocating for something like that. Do you, Sheila?
No, in fact, we've been talking about the Uyghur genocide that's happening in China.
That's right.
While most of the mainstream media doesn't even know what a Uyghur is.
Yep.
We have another super chat from Michael Dulong. It gives us $10. I don't see a comment there, but thank you very much. Valerie Lundgren gives us $20 Canadian, and she says, thank you for all the hard work. Thank you for the very kind donation, Valerie. And I think we're all caught up. Maybe. Are we all caught up, Justin? I can't hear you, so you got to tell David.
No, Justin, first of all, Justin doesn't have that video, and he's barking in my ear, no, no, no. Oh, he does have the video. Oh. Okay, then.
Okay, and I see the extra super chats now. I see them now.
Okay, then. So shall we do the video and then get back to super chats, perhaps? Oh, okay. Let's check it out. Okay. Oh, Sheila, it's... was told by the Seattle mayor. Okay, so here is a statue being pulled down, and oopsie, fell on somebody. Somebody dialed 911. Hopefully they haven't called for disbanding the ambulance service. But that's what happens, kids, when you don't pay attention to physics, when you tear down hundreds of pounds of stone, and you're in the trajectory of where it's going to fall because of this little thing called gravity, you're going to get hurt. So I don't know if that's going to be a, what do they call it, a teachable moment, Sheila, when it comes to vandalism? But
it's a teachable moment for all of us about physics, isn't it? You know, it's funny. That's the most physical labor those people have done their entire lives, and they still get it wrong. They can't even do destruction right when their entire ideology is about destruction. Michigan 12 gives us $2 Canadian. Mike Seguin gives us, wow, Mike, $69.99 Canadian. Have a great day. I don't have time to fix the problems today. Laugh out loud. I don't have time to fix the problems today either. So I just gave up, ran upstairs, put my phone on a tripod, and just rolled with the punches. We've got one from Patricia Massey. I'll give to hear Sheila mispronounce my surname again. Okay. Cost me $20 last time, but I loved it. I love Rebel News. Patricia, I'm very sorry. You can send me an email where you break down your name phonetically. But I do appreciate the generosity. And if anybody wants to donate here for the last 4 minutes of the show to hear me also screw up their last name, I'm here for 4 more minutes.
That's it? 4 more minutes? I thought we were maybe at the halfway mark. You know, Sheila, I swear, it's the fastest hour. So why don't we just end it with Blackface Guy, Davis. This is, you know, now last weekend, folks, there were protests, anti-racism protests in cities around the world, actually, in response to the George Floyd death in Minneapolis a while back. But Toronto, I think, can lay claim to one unique protester. This 28-year-old man who lives with his parents, Davis, showed up at Nathan Phillips Square in complete blackface. Even his hands were blackface. There he is. The police are escorting him out of Nathan Phillips Square, which was probably good for Davis in terms of self-preservation. And he was now, but here's where things get a little interesting for me, Sheila, and I'm going to, really pose it in the form of a question. Davis was charged with breach of peace.
once they got him to the station, they upgraded to the charge to cause a disturbance. Now, what I'm asking people here is, what are the rules of blackface? Because we have our illustrious Prime Minister who has used blackface so many times, not even he can remember. So do you get criminally charged if you're out in public with blackface, or when you're out in public where there's a demonstration that might react negatively to blackface? Or, like I said, Sheila, I'm just asking the rules because, you know, if only I could have got into the media scrum on Monday for Justin Trudeau, and I knew nobody in the media party, none of the trained SEALs would ask this, but my question to him would have simply been this: Mr. Prime Minister, given that we all know you're a great aficionado of blackface, what do you make of the 28-year-old man in Toronto that wore that to blackface to an anti-racism protest? Could you imagine what his reaction would be, Sheila? So I wonder what he would have said. And also, do you know what the rules are when it comes to blackface these days, Sheila? Because the same people that were cheering on the firing or the suspension of Wendy Mosley are the indeed same people who protect the Prime Minister from any accusations of racism because of his use of blackface.
I have so many things to say about this because, okay, yeah, it's generally a bad idea to go to a Black Lives Matter protest wearing blackface. You are indeed asking for trouble. Yeah. But he was the one who is going to be the victim of a crime that day. People were, and from what I understand, somebody did throw a water bottle on him. So, I mean, that's criminal. Yep. He was the victim of a crime. People were threatening him with violence. And yet he's being arrested because he did something stupid. Doing stupid things is not illegal in this country. Yeah. I know. I have teenagers. I could use the break from them and send them to the youth jail if that were the case. But it's so that this guy is not only charged, but then upgraded and charged under this catch-all thing of like creating a disturbance or whatever, breach of the peace. I mean, that's a very vague catch-all thing. Is what he did morally wrong? Yeah, we all think blackface is morally wrong. Well, not all of us, everybody except the Liberals. They seem pretty okay with it, pretty forgiving about it. We all think it's wrong, but is it illegal? Stupid? Yeah. Illegal? I'm not so sure. Anyway, we've got super chat. We've got one from Kappa Daseo gives us Norwegian krone. 22 Norwegian krones. I'd rather be what they call a Nazi than what they are. How about we don't throw around the words Nazi or fascist offhandedly, because it normalizes it. It takes the sting out of it after a while, doesn't it? But that word should have a sting forever.
Indeed, Sheila. But I think, I think where the viewer might be coming from is the fact that these people call themselves Antifa, which is a contraction of being anti-fascist, yet they lovingly embrace the tools of fascism, censorship, violence, thuggery, mob rule, and they have become indeed what they claim to be, what they hate.
Yeah, and going back to mob rule, tell me that charge of the blackface guy is not just strictly based on mob rule.
Oh, yeah.
That's mob justice. That's not actual justice, or community policing, as they like to say. We've got one from CC Jarvis, gives us $20 Canadian. Thank you very much. Says, please look beyond the political theater. Being no fan of the Libranos, nor entirely pleased with the Conservatives, please try to look behind the curtain to what is really misguiding our country. Look, I'm as much a critic of the Conservatives as I am of the Liberals, because the Conservative leadership are the ones letting the country down. Yeah. If there was a more beatable Liberal leader than Justin Trudeau, I've never seen one. And yet they somehow managed to lose to a guy who groped a reporter and wore blackface 3 times. And all that information came out during the campaign. like at the perfect time. And yet somehow they still managed to lose. So, we've got another super chat from Observer Dude. Thank you very much. £5. Antifa are planning to tear down more statues in London and riot this weekend. I think you can set your watch to these things. Every 4 years they like to riot. I hope the police will actually do something. I'm not so sure that they will. I think, wasn't it in London that the police stood down and then they pulled down the statue? Like the police were protecting the statue and then they stood down and then they either defaced or pulled down the statue. There's been so many statues removed in the last 72 hours. I'm losing track of how much history is getting memory hold. And we've got one last super chat from Claude Pratt. Gives us $2.79 Canadian, and I don't see a super chat, and we are 3 minutes past the hour. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with my technical difficulties, including Justin in studio. Oh, God.
Sheila, there are 2 more, so you're not quite done yet, my dear.
And I accidentally just called Justin in studio with my leg, as though this day could not get any worse. I just put my phone on my leg. Okay, we've got one from Kane Enmark, gives us $5 Canadian. I hope Keenan wasn't too mad for spelling his name wrong yesterday. You know what? I think with a name like Kian Bexty, you just get used to people spelling your name wrong. I've never seen Kian be uptight about it, not even once. And I have a pretty easy name to spell and people still get it wrong. So, when you got a mouthful like Kian Bexty, I'm sure he doesn't take it too personally. We've got one from Vito Anthony D, gives us $2 Canadian. Here's a chance to screw my name up, Sheila. And I did. I said Vito D Anthony instead of Vito Anthony D. So you got your money's worth, friend.
Well, there you have it. And what can I say, Sheila? I learned something new about you every show. The fact that you were able to dial a phone with your leg. I think when things return to normal, you got to try out for Cirque du Soleil, because if you are that much of a contortionist, my hat goes off to you. But thank you so much again for picking up those super chats under pressure and duress of going outdoors in the great white north. Can we still call it that, by the way? And in any event, folks, thank you one and all for tuning in, and thank you especially to those who did make super chats. And Sheila and I will be back here on Tuesday next week. Tomorrow, Ezra Levin will be in this chair. And in the meantime, thank you so much again, and stay safe.